We do on Fridays, typically with my man 30 and So Gaming over there, but a little bit different scene. This week is going to be a Spider-Man 2 preview roundup. The previous stream where I talked about how Spider-Man 2 is looking even better than before, we actually looked at all the new footage coming out from the previews. It's B-roll, so whoever you watch, it's the same footage. We might end up looping that footage for you here in a moment, but we're primarily going to be reading through some of the previews to give you a glimpse into what everybody's saying about this game, because it is glowing. Not surprising, Insomniac had the confidence to let people play this game so far in advance. We're even hearing that this was a 6-month-old build that they were playing, so we're likely to see more polish and things before it finally comes out. I'm going to end the previous stream and redirect everybody over. Make sure as you come in and enjoy this show, if you're enjoying the conversation and everything, smash that like button. It helps the video, and it's totally free. You can also hit subscribe. That way you can talk in the chat, or you can gift some members and help us hit some of the goals that we have. So, Mike, you've had a chance to peruse some of this new B-roll footage, and there was the new gameplay yesterday. Before we start looking at what IGN has to say about the preview, what did you think about what we got to see yesterday as well as today?
Well, I'm literally looking at the new footage from IGN right now as you were getting the show going. I watched yesterday's State of Play, State of Play. It looks freaking amazing, dude. It looks so gorgeous. It looks... I don't know how you can make it better looking than it was, because when you played it, you know what I mean? When you played it on PlayStation 4 back in 2018, you're like, man, this is so good looking. And then Miles Morales came out, and you're like, man, this is so good looking. And then you look at this, and you're like, those don't look as good as as this does. This looks phenomenal. It look like visually, it looks phenomenal.
Yeah, and we're going to see this highlighted in some of the previews. Ray tracing is always on in this game, no matter what mode you choose. There's a 30 FPS, 40 FPS, and 60 FPS, and ray tracing is always on. They said that they found a way to do it. They wanted to have that fidelity and that lighting always present, and I think you can see that in the footage as well. I went through this morning just some of my observations from last night, before we get to the previews. The lighting at night and on the buildings themselves, I thought was especially impressive. Swinging through the city, reflections, when the sun was setting, you really do get a better sense of time of day as well as just detail of the world than we probably got in the previous version. So, and then the footage coming out today, just so much detail in the actual characters, the boss fight that we get to see, right? Just the character on the lizard body and everything. It just looks really, really impressive compared to the last game.
I like the different styles. Maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I like the different styles between what you can see Miles, the way he fights, and the way Peter fights in the symbiote suit. You know what I mean? It looks like raw. Like he's just angry because that's what the suit's doing to him, where Miles is still, almost like holding back his punches a little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, there's more of an acrobatic nature, to Miles, and he's got the electricity, so, that looks awesome. But then, yeah, the symbiote suit is very much he almost looks like a boxer. He's like punching and throwing and flinging them. And I thought,
can feel it. Just looking at it, you can feel like the pound, like how he's hitting him hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's important. I went back and played. I remember after Gotham Knights going back and playing Arkham City and thinking, Arkham Knight. And I remember just how punchy and crunchy the combat felt. And I'm excited to see that in this. Because in Spider-Man and Miles Morales, the first two games, I don't think the combat felt quite as punchy. It's more acrobatic. It's more quick and agile. Yeah. So,
it took what I compared it to Arkham when it first came out. I was like, I always say they raise the bar, and what Arkham did for fighting, they brought Spider-Man up to that and then raised it above a little bit more than what Arkham was doing, based on Spider-Man is not Batman, right? Batman's more powerful, where Spider-Man is more, like you say, acrobatic, real quick, and the way it moves. It was really impressive that they did that in 2018, and now with this finessing him into a different form, making him more punchy.
Well, Insomniac here talking with IGN. IGN stressing that they learned as it developed its third Spider-Man game exclusively for the PS5, and saying that it's a big moment for both the series and PlayStation 5. As a PS5 exclusive, Spider-Man stands to be able to leverage the platform's technology in ways that previous games in the series have not. Now, that's a huge point of debate, and I'm gonna skip down to the interview because we're seeing already kind of that discussion around loading screens. So the footage we saw yesterday, they showed how fast travel worked, and literally he holds the button down, it fills the bar. Pretty standard. I'm doing that in Jedi Survivor, but in Jedi Survivor, I'm immediately met with a loading screen and a little spinner down in the corner, and in this, it like zooms in on that part of the map. You see Miles swoop in, and then you're back right in the game. There's like no loading at all. It's basically like almost like a 2 to 3 second transition cinematic.
Right.
What did you think about that? As far as, and you also can like switch between the two Spideys, almost instantaneously.
Almost, yeah.
And what did you think about that? I mean, that's kind of what we were hoping to see this gen from these boxes.
I mean, it's impressive. I mean, it's sort of like from Insomniac when they did Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, when you're going through those portals. You know what I mean? It's basically that, right? And when you're cutting through the portal, it's like cutting from Peter to Miles. It's impressive. I mean, it's impressive that it's what they're doing on the PlayStation. I'm excited for that. It just seems like this Spider-Man, for all the footage I watched yesterday and what I'm watching right now, it just seems like they've ramped it up speed-wise across the board. Like his combat feels faster. The traversing through the city is now faster, which I'll try to get into a little bit more later. And then also the cutscenes, or not cutscenes, the load screens, just faster. Just everything's just faster.
Yeah, Mike Fitzgerald here, director of Core Technology, says, for us, this is really a culmination of everything we've learned after developing for this console. We did Spider-Man Remastered, Miles Morales, and Ratchet and Clank. So Ratchet and Clank, experience is coming into play here, and says, and so, as our fourth title for the PS5, we've really gotten to leverage everything we've seen in developing those games. Our performance mode for this title is as ray tracing on by default. We've really expanded that ray tracing, ray trace reflections, and throughout the game. It's on the water and the oceans, and it really gives more realistic picture everywhere. Where do you gauge importance there for ray tracing? Because that's something that I commonly am fine to turn off because I want the 60 FPS. Hearing this, that there's a lingering concern, after my experience with Final Fantasy 16, I'm like, oh, buddy, you better give me consistent 60 or I'll be a little miffed that you guys did this. Where does ray tracing land on the importance factor for you? Because it typically requires you to turn on a 30 FPS mode.
I'm less of a stickler than you are when it comes to the technical stuff like this, right? To me, if ray tracing's on or off, I look at it as if the developer is making something and that's the way they want to present it, then that's the way I'll play it. You know what I mean? So I'm not looking at it going, oh, this is going to hurt the game. Like, if this does, where let's say it made it a 30 frames per second game, then so be it. That's what they want. That's what they wanted because they wanted the best visuals or whatever they wanted to do. So I'm okay with it. I'm not a big stickler on that stuff.
Then they do talk about the SSD here. We, of course, use the SSD and the storage solution on the console to really even more affect gameplay-wise. In the first couple of Spider-Man games, we really used to get rid of the loading screens, but now you see getting used to offer faster traversal through the world. That was kind of a concern I had, was the swinging in the first game was so fun, but it gets a little tiring because it's not extremely fast, and now that the map is almost twice as big, is leaning on fast travel or traversal with the speed, you're basically flying, you're kind of flying like Superman. Do you think that's at all sort of a break from canon, Spidey's basically flying instead of swinging around the city?
Yeah, so when you played the first game and the second game, if you did those long arcs and then released at the top, you would go slower. But if you released at the bottom of the thing, you would go faster. You could do a beeline, and then you could shoot your webs and then yank yourself forward and move faster. So there was ways to speed through the city if you wanted to. And if you didn't want to do that, you could fast travel to points that you've already discovered and whatnot. So that was fine. As a Spider-Man fan, I like the wingsuit because it's cool. But I'm afraid that you're just going to stop using the swing, and that's what Spider-Man is, right? So I'm hoping during the gameplay, maybe the first act, maybe you're swinging, and then obviously you're going to get the power or the suit later on, and then you'll start using the suit. Maybe that's when they introduce the second. I don't know if the map's wide open right away or if they introduce it after, you know what I mean? During the story a little bit.
Right.
Where Because as soon as I saw the trailer yesterday, or the thing yesterday, and they said we have a second map, I was like, oh man, you're gonna go across that those bridges. I was like, that's gonna be a pain in the ass. But then they have the suit, and I'm like, oh well, then you can just tall building, fly across the water. So I like that they're adding it, but at the same time, each their own. Gamers play differently. I probably more swing than fly because I just like being Spider-Man, and that's one of the things is him swinging through the city. I feel like that,
Well, people in chat are pointing out, like, he does have wingsuits in the comics. Sure, it's more of a glide, though, right? And in this, he's kind of like, he looks like a jet. He's, like, flying straight through the city. I don't have a problem with it at all. I think they needed to do this. I think they did.
Sure.
Because it's like, I want to get around the city relatively quickly. Now, obviously, how fast they're doing that is only possible because they've advanced these consoles, right? They've got an SSD in there. They talk about that in the trailer. They say, because of the SSD, you can, you can instantaneously switch Spideys. You can almost practically instantaneous load. And then you can travel through a massive map incredibly fast. When you hear them mention the SSD, this got spun up into a whole thing with Ratchet and Clank, where they claimed that Insomniac claimed the SSD in the PS5 was special, which they never did. This was completely made up and projected onto the statements. Do you think we're going to face that again this time? Because they are making the SSD part of the marketing. They're talking about the fact that this stuff's possible because of it. Do you think we face that again? Because this will inevitably probably end up on PC at some point.
Instead of saying does a bear crap in the woods, does a internet troll live in the basement of his mom's house? Yes. This is what's going to happen.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah. All the time, these things are going to be, someone I guarantee will be like, look, you swung across the whole map and I hit the border, the boundary. You know what I mean? Like someone's going to do stuff like that. That's what the internet does. So yes, people are going to look at it and go, this is not special to Sony. But if you look at the marketing material, the way they say it, PlayStation 5 has this SSD. They're making games for their PlayStation 5 first-party exclusives, and they're working with the SSD. So this is why they say this is why it's part of the marketing material. It's only on the PlayStation 5, right? Obviously, if you have a PC and it comes out for PC later, you're going to have the same kind of, with your SSD that you have in your computer. But when it comes to consoles, like, this is the first for PlayStation because of the SSD, right? So that's what the marketing is for.
Yeah. We got some good information here, too, where they're asking some about the graphical options. And the Fitzgerald here says, so really the foundation for how we decided to render things is we like to have our resolution be dynamic. And then we have a pretty robust temporal anti-alias solution that lets us scale that up and down, do different dithering effects with materials and things in the scene. And what that means is we get to leverage, we get to take players' preference about how they want to play the game, and also make sure we use all the features of their display in the console as well. So whether you have a VRR television, 120 hertz TV, whether you like playing at 60, 30, or 40 FPS, if you have a 120 hertz television, we really get to tailor everything to best utilize that tech. Where are you going here? Which one are you picking? What do you, if you got a lot of things to pick from here, which one are you picking?
I'm picking the 60 frames if it's there, right? I mean, that's, if I have my TV that I paid for and it can do all the stuff, then that's what I'm going to do. Obviously, if it doesn't do that, then I go down to the next variable of the thing. Yeah, I'm going 60. I'm going straight up the top of the thing because that's what they're allowing to.
And we have a little bit more information on what they learned, too, because with Miles, they said, I think we wanted to say for those titles, we had Fidelity Mode, which had the full 4K and ray trace reflections, and then we had Performance Mode, which turned the ray tracing off and rendered at a lower resolution. And then we were able to add, I think around at launch, is not just after the Performance Ray Tracing Mode, as we called it, which was trying to be the best of both. And for this game, we're able to deliver that as the baseline performance mode. There's no mode of this game that has the ray tracing turned off. No need for it. We figured out how to deliver what we feel like is the right Spider-Man picture and visuals, and we want to make sure every player is seeing that. That's impressive. The fact that they basically, this is one of the reasons why I think we were beneficial. That it was really beneficial for them to even build Miles. Like, they didn't sell it at full price, but I think they learned some things that they clearly are leveraging here.
Well, I also think it helps them that. And this is not a shot at them, right? Insomniac didn't have to rebuild Manhattan, right? It's assets that they've already had in the game from Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales. And now, yeah, they added Queens and Brooklyn on the other side, but they didn't have to take that extra time to put in development. They're like, you know what? We can really push what we learned from the first game, and especially since they did the remaster, right? They did the remaster for Spider-Man on the PlayStation 5, and then Miles came on the PlayStation 5. So they were already working with it beforehand, before this even came out.
What are your thoughts on the dialogue around the map? Because there's a lot of different opinions here. Mine is that we're basically getting, they said, almost twice the size. But to me, that's like we're getting a whole other map plus the original. And I'm sure the original is not identical in that there'll be new things. There'll be new things to do, new missions, new quests, new points of interest that have stuff going on. Because you can go to all the same places, but it's going to be different, look different, feel different. Sure. Also, more cars, more people. It just feels a little bit more alive. But given that they did use the original map, where do you land on them doing that? Is that a problem, or is it like, nah, there's enough? Like, where are you on the spectrum there?
Am I okay with them using Manhattan? Is that what you're asking? Mm-hmm. Of course. I mean, that's where Spider-Man is. He's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. That's where he protects. That's his. What would he do? Go to London? I mean, I don't understand. Like, what do people want? I mean, that's the story. It's the story of Spider-Man. It's in Manhattan, and I think it's cool that they added the borough to the mix. I mean, what people were complaining. Right, people complain about Hogwarts Legacy. They were, if we get Hogwarts Legacy 2, are they gonna do the castle again? Are they gonna do the same area? It's like, yeah, probably, considering it takes place in the same area. So yeah, I mean, Spider-Man takes place in Manhattan, so I'm okay with them using Manhattan. Obviously, it's not gonna be the same exact missions that you played in the last game. There's gonna be new things going on, new stories. You can tell different stories in the same locations. That's okay.
Well, and for me, it mathematically checks out. It's like, okay, so if the map is almost twice as large, we're getting an entirely new area that's almost equal to the previous game, and then we're also getting the previous game's map, and then we're also getting 2 playable characters, all new abilities. I wonder sometimes why we have to, even entertain that, but it's like, I feel like if I don't speak to it, it doesn't get legs if you just like let it sit there and fester. It's like, no, these are ignorant, like, bad faith takes, like calling this DLC or calling this an expansion. It's just, I don't know. I think it's just tiring from the sort of narratives that get put out there.
There's already people complaining though that, well, this game is not as long as the other one, or maybe it's the same, right? They're like, oh, it's double the map size, but yet it's only, I think they said it's like 17 hours, and I'm like, that's how the first game was. I mean, the stories, there's still other things to do. There's still things to collect. So it's like 30, 40-hour game with all the side missions and stuff. But if you're going to beeline the main story, I think that's a fair price. Like, even if it's $70 where you get the expansion or whatever, it's still tit for tat, best piece of entertainment you can get. You go to the movies, and if you sat in the theater watch a 17-hour long movie, you're paying big bucks for that, right? You're paying less to play a video game to go through for 17 hours just for the main story, if that's what it is. It might be 20, I don't know, but yeah, I think it's fine.
Now, I don't worry about game length when it gets close to about 20 hours. If you're just primarily sticking to the campaign, I'm like, that's plenty. Like, I just hit 20 hours in Jedi Survivor. I would say probably 4 to 5 of those hours was me just booting it up way back when I was trying to fix it and get it to work right. So I'm probably at about 15 hours, right, of actual playing. And I'm kind of like, okay, another 5 or 6 hours and I'm ready to be done. Like, I'm ready for the campaign to come to an end. And then if I want to go back, there's all sorts of, Metroidvania aspects to go and do and unlock, because now I have more abilities. So I think that's a perfectly fine length for a game like this, because you're not going to get just 17 hours from this game if you even get the most remotest of sidetracked or side quest or side mission. There's no way you're going to be able to just stick to the main story. There's so much to do.
Right.
I liked how they showed off it's almost like an AR, like augmented reality. It projects the icons into the world. So that if you want to try to find something to do.
The AR thing, they said that they can see through it, so you can see the images across the city. That's cool.
Well, and that prevents you from having to constantly go back into your map. Are you the kind of guy that does that? Like, do you pull the map out? Are you trying to check every box in every area? Because I did that in Spider-Man 1, and when I saw that, I was like, oh, that'll be so much nicer to not have to constantly pull my map out.
what I like about Spider-Man, the first one in Miles. I played it so much and swung through the city so much that I started learning the city. You know what I mean? Just like I would if I was driving in Manhattan, and so I would know where the things were, and I just loved just swinging. I would literally just turn on the game just to swing through the city. Right? My son still does that to this day. He loves swinging through the city. So yeah, I mean, it's nice that I don't have to go back into my map, right, back and forth, because there's plenty of games out there, right? Hell, Starfield that I'm playing right now, you go back and forth into that map all the time. You know, if you can divvy that up or give another option for gamers, and I think this is a cool way they're doing it. And they've written into the lore. His lenses on his mask can see the holograms above the thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's part of the story that they're trying to tell in the game, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, and we have some commentary here from them about the city and the buildings. They said the great thing about them is that you sort of have your tried and true skyscrapers in Manhattan, and once you get across the river, which is experienced on its own, hopefully use the web wings to do that and experience the speed which you can do that. You get over sort of our Spider-Man stomping ground, you get over to sort of our Spider-Man stomping ground. So you get to visit May's house and explore and Queens and get that more sort of neighborhood feel and its lush trees. And then for Brooklyn, you get Brooklyn Visions and Miles' sort of like high school stomping ground, and that really comes across in some of the activities and adventures. As far as being able to switch back and forth between the two characters, it sounds like they're even going to be featuring I covered you up. I realized I can't do that. I'm like looking for the footage. I want to have some footage running and I can't find it. Are you going to stick to one or the other? Are you going to constantly bounce between the two, or are you going to really try to divvy it up?
I'm just gonna go play through the story wherever the story takes me into the thing. This is how I play most of these types of games. I play where they tell me to go, and then once I get my fulfillment of that, then I start just going around. Like if there's in Spider-Man 1 and Miles, there's always like a downtime. You do a mission, and then you have to wait for the next mission to start, right? They don't call you right away, or they don't do anything. So you're like in a certain area, and then all of a sudden you might do some crime fighting. So if it takes me over there, and then all of a sudden I start to do missions over in Brooklyn and Queens, then so be it. That's what I'll be.
Yeah, there's also some things that you can only do with certain characters, which I think is pretty cool. They're going to have like those unique things specific to each character. They also indicated that if you do some of the side quests, it's going to take you to villains, like certain Marvel villains. Are there any Marvel villains you're hoping to see? Because I know there's a lot of theories about, that it's definitely going to be more than just Kraven and Venom. Is there anybody on your list of like, I hope they're in the game, or I hope they do this?
No one's specific. I just like, with any comic book game, we want as many costumes as possible, and we want as many as villains as possible, right? I want to fight as many villains as possible that they put in the game. I hate when they're like, oh yeah, we put 4 guys in the game. You're like, what, 4? He's got like 25 guys he can go up against. You should have all 25 guys. I've done this with, I love how Arkham has so many guys in there, right? Well, Gotham Knights only had 5, right? Gotham Knights had like 5 bad guys in the thing. And I'm like, DLC, please. Like, can you give us more? Like Two-Face and everybody else that's in there,
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, just like they're doing with this game, they have a lot of suits. They have a lot of cosmetics. So hopefully they have a lot of bad guys that we can go up against.
Mm. Well, and they talk here about the technology in the lighting department. They says, I've got to give credit to our lighting department. We have a whole team of folks who, especially in those cinematics, are very carefully constructing lighting rigs to light the characters from the right way for every individual shot. If you could see it without the camera changing, you'd be surprised at how much changes between every shot to get it just right. We definitely expanded on it from a tech point of view. Certainly in the demo, you saw Kraven, who was luscious, hairy. I actually noticed that about the hair in the newest footage, that it actually looked quite a bit better than the previous games. And with
I noticed it in that fur around his neck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very, very well done. I have that on the screen right now. You didn't even know that. With the lighting and what they've done with the lighting, whenever you're coming at a game like this, and they're talking about the tech breakdowns and all of that, where do you place that on importance? Because for me, I have found sometimes, especially like some of the commentary even recently out of Cyberpunk, like they're talking about you better make sure your PC can stay cool, right? It's going to be so demanding. Where do you prioritize that kind of a thing? Because sometimes I get a little bit worried about companies over stressing lighting and tech to a point where maybe the game struggles or doesn't run as well. Where do you gauge that? Like if you're placing an importance on like a scoring meter or something.
This is a hard question because it all depends on what type of game. Like I don't know if I'm playing Minecraft and they're doing the lighting in that and they do some ray tracing with some mods and stuff, not a big deal. But if you're doing a dramatic game like let's say Alan Wake or Mass Effect with the cutscenes or even Spider-Man, like I don't know, I put a more, if you're immersing me in your world and then all of a sudden that lighting and everything else that you put into the game all of a sudden flickers or pulls me out, it's just like watching a movie. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? Like all of a sudden if a bad soundtrack happens or something happens on screen, you like look at it and you're like, what was that? So it's not really an important to me as important is to the developer themselves. Like if they're doing something and the lighting is screwing something up and they're force feeding it into the game, that's bad to me. But if they're doing it because they know it's part of the experience that they want you to do, then fine.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what they pulled off with this because they're really touting this as a pretty big achievement, right? Thank you so much, Willie Kale, for hitting the goal today, man. That's so kind of you. The fact that and we just kind of got to show the fast travel. So they kind of go into the menu and they hold the button down for fast travel and then like it kind of zooms in, right? I just want to kind of showcase that's what we were talking about earlier. And then now you're in control of miles. Like that's how long it is. What they are saying, I think, is something that a lot of people are going to be keeping an eye on because, especially anybody that breaks down the tech like Digital Foundry and others, there's going to be a lot of questions, I think. Like, how did you guys do this? The secret sauce in their engine and the ability to give ray tracing all the time, have this lighting set up this way all the time, and still achieve multiple modes as well as 60 FPS, because in the wake of a lot of the games that have come out this year, just the performance problems in Jedi Survivor and its performance mode, I don't get 60 FPS in Final Fantasy 16 when I'm outside of combat. And this makes me sort of a Insomniac cheerleader. It's like, all right, they're figuring it out. Right. So that means the rest of y'all can. Either that or, we might be dealing with, engine limitations, obviously. So I do think, though, in the grand scheme of the tech conversation, that's going to be something that comes out of this. When you look at next-gen consoles and what you want out of them and where things are landing, do you think we've sort of not really landed squarely on that, or do you think we've gotten pretty much what we were promised with respect to games performance and all of the bells and whistles that were trotted out? Because whenever this subject comes up, I'm always told that, well, everybody lies, marketing lies, so, they lied to us and we just kind of have to accept it. And I'm like, I don't really think so. And I think this game might be kind of proving that we don't have to accept less than performance and less than on graphical fidelity.
Well, proof is that marketing does lie. That's what it's there for. It's to sell you on stuff, right? So that's what marketing is. It's like a white lie to sell you stuff, right? It's not video games in general. It's just marketing in general is like a lie to get you to get something. But I look at it as I'm not worried about Spider-Man or any kind of first-party title on generations, right? Like Xbox is hitting the marks that they want to hit for their first-party games, the ones that are for now. I know people are going to go, well, what about Starfield? That's not a first-party game. They bought that 2 years ago. You know what I mean? That wasn't built from the ground up. But if you look at like Forza and other games that they've made, they are hitting those marks that they said they were going to hit, right? For the majority of the part. Now, Sony has hit that mark every single time of their first-party titles. The games that you named, like Jedi Survivor and Final Fantasy, even though Final Fantasy is a solo, first-party title, well, it's a third-party title, but exclusively on PlayStation, those are still third-party games. And Sony's studios know how to make games for their platform, right? So I don't think there's an issue there as far as is it going to run smooth or not. As far as I forgot where I was going to go now with this. Hit me with the question again, because I just
as far as what we're getting this gen, like, is this game showing that, these kind of things?
This particular game is showing, I think, from what we've seen and from the gameplay that I'm watching, right? Looks like it's going to hit those marks that Sony promised what those marks are. Now, does this go into all effect of other games? Are we getting next gen systems? Some games are coming out and they are next gen. Other games are not. More are not, and I think that has a lot to do with the plague that happened a couple of years ago, and they're just coming out now. Hence why we got so many good games this year, right?
Yeah.
We got so many good games this year because they were like backlogged now, from being delayed, getting pushed back because they had more time to actually flush it out. So I think late in the cycle, we're in year 3 of this console now. So I think we're going to start seeing most of the time we get games a little bit earlier in the next gen, when we get that gen, the current gen.
Yeah.
We get them earlier on, like end of year 1, in year 2. Now we're starting to get them in year 3, year 4, going into 5. I think we're going to see a lot more games that are hitting the marks that they promised us across the industry than the what they said 3 years ago when they're like, oh yeah, all this stuff is going to happen. I think we're going to get it later in the cycle.
Yeah, it also seems like there was even some special involvement here. We have an interview that says, we're very lucky to work with Mark Cerny, the lead system architect on PS5. Mark's one of the producers of the game. He's my mentor. I owe a lot to him in terms of who I am today professionally. Working with Mark helped us understand where the console is going. We knew about the SSD, and so that fantasy of players, I want to swing faster and faster and faster, we knew we could deliver that. So it seemed like there was a very good one-to-one relationship where they weren't sort of just making this in a vacuum. They were working in conjunction with the architects behind the PS5 itself, which I think is worthy of note. And I think it's fair then to say kind of what you were just driving at. We cannot expect every game to do everything Insomniac was able to squeeze out. They have a very unique relationship with the PS5 and even Mark Cerny. So that, kind of to your point, that really backs up some of what you were just saying. That if it's a third-party title, we're going to have to maybe accept that it might not hit the thresholds that this game is hitting.
Right. Well, it also depends on, like, let's say a third-party game started development just at the very beginning of the PlayStation dev kits that went out, like in 2018. And now the game's coming out in year 4 or 5 of PlayStation with no gap where they had 2 years where they're working at home. You know what I mean? Like, those would be hitting better than they are. There was a big chunk of developers that were hurt because of what happened, because of just how long it took to move the data over from them to go to one person's house and then switch. You know what I mean? So we're seeing a lot more stuff, and I think we're fine. I think a lot of us look at it and go, we're not getting the stuff that we're getting. And you preach on this all the time. You were promised. I'm disappointed with the X, right? That we're not getting the 120 frames, 60 frames per second type of stuff. But they are going back and fixing that slowly, just not to our liking, right? And it's sad that, I know this is not an Xbox thing, but Xbox did lie to us. I mean, even if you were an Xbox person, right? I have 2 Xboxes. I have an Xbox Series S, and I have it for my son, and I have a Series X for myself. And I'm disappointed. And I said last week that I will not be buying an Xbox when it comes out, whatever the next gen is, right away. I'm gonna hold back. And that also, in effect, I don't have a PlayStation 5, but if a PlayStation 6 comes out, I'm also, right, not going to get a PlayStation 6 right away, because I want to see what they say and what comes out. I don't want to wait 2 years. Remember when PlayStation 5 first came out, there was no games out right away. You know what I mean? There was Ratchet and Clank came out pretty fast, and then what was the other one? The
Returnal.
Returnal. What was the other one? There was one more.
Demon Souls remake.
That's it. Demon Souls. Right. So, like, if you're waiting for like AAA games, you got to wait anyway to like the first end of year 2. So really, there's not a big purpose to buy those systems right away. Obviously, some people in chat are going to buy it day one because you got to keep up with the Joneses. You like the technology, you're gonna get that. You would get it because of what you do. But for the most part, I think majority of the population could just wait, right, for the first year 2 to see actually what games are coming out.
Well, this is a little off subject, but I think it's related, right? The PS5 Pro is likely coming next year, and you wonder if maybe Insomniac's ahead, and that's why they did this. They want ray tracing in every mode. Now, there's elements of ray tracing in the ray tracing suite that's not all turned on a lot of the times. Like I'm assuming, I think this is a fair assumption, that the 30 FPS mode is going to have more going on, higher resolution, probably more of the ray tracing tools and assets turned on, and then less of that's going to be when I turn on 60 FPS. I'm going to get less of those things. But I wonder if it's Insomniac's ahead of the curve, and they know that, man, once that PS5 Pro rolls around, all this is here and ready to be better and stronger, because the rumors were that, ray tracing would be enhanced, or I forget the word now. They were going to be doing something specifically with the ray tracing on the PS5 Pro, which is actually really important to devs. Knowing that that's, the PS5 Pro is likely coming, is that you don't currently have a PlayStation 5 right now, do you?
No.
Okay, so do you think if that thing comes out and can really turn up the heat on all these titles, and you have this amazing backlog of games like the ones we just named, plus all of the others, plus this one,
right?
Does that put you in the market for a PS5 Pro?
Sure. Financially, right now, I can't get a PlayStation 5 just because, life is what it is. So I said this a couple weeks ago. I bought a graphics card instead of a PlayStation 5, right? Because for what I do, it was a better investment to buy the graphics card than it was to buy the PlayStation 5. But yeah, and then I think I said it on this podcast as well, where I was like, Spider-Man's coming out. I'm not going to get it day one, even though I'm super excited about it, because there is that rumors of PlayStation Pro coming out. And why would I buy a regular PlayStation at the tail end here when the PlayStation 5 Pro is coming out, and then I can get in on the ground floor with that, and then that will last me, until PlayStation 6 comes out year 2, and then I'll be like, you know what, I can do an upgrade to PlayStation 6. You know what I mean?
Right, and the word was accelerated. Thank you, Eugene. They're going to accelerate ray tracing. Yeah, I think it puts somebody like you in a great spot. Like if you can, you can stack up those pennies and nickels between now and next holiday season. You got that money set aside for a PS5 Pro. I mean, that's a great buy-in at that point. You're getting like the best version of the games and this gen. And Zubair's adding some context here too as to why ray tracing is so important. We're not necessarily looking at every single inch of these previews. I'm kind of highlighting sections of their previews. I don't want to replace the preview. If you want to read the entire thing, you got to go to IGN. But Zubair says, like Wheezy said, so Wheezy's another member of the community here that, has done a lot of research into ray tracing. If every mode uses ray tracing reflections, they didn't need to build screen space reflections or cube map reflections. It made development easier. This is one of the reasons why, in my even limited research into ray tracing, developers love it, because it cuts out work. They can automate a lot of the work that goes into lighting and a light source and how it interacts with everything in the space. And so I think that's really important. I want to loop back, though, to a subject here that they touch on in this interview, because a lot of the times I think sequels face a challenge. Like, how do you differentiate yourself? And they answer the question they hear. Like, I think we know we have a really strong foundation from the first couple of games, and we're not trying to change for change's sake. There's a lot that people love about these games that make them Spider-Man games. It's about understanding what that is, and then ways to try something different and make it new. And as you add new things, you got to make sure they fit together in the right way. And somebody kind of adds here, I think our team is also normally very excited at the opportunity to continue to innovate. I think we want to satisfy people, make sure they're happy with the experience. We're not straying too far from something that we know and love, but we want to surprise them, and we want to give them new toys. So in a lot of ways, it's almost like, what will be cool? Can we add something like this or something like that? And we also have an open and collaborative team, and I think that goes a long way. So, when you're looking at, because they talk about the web wings here, new mechanics, things like that. When you look at a sequel, that's a challenge, right? If they break too much, somebody's going to say, this doesn't even feel like Spidey anymore, because I think maybe even the flying gets really close to the line. But then we're looking at the combat and we're like, oh my gosh, like this looks amazing. How do you gauge that when you're going to score it, review it, critique it? Does this thing really need to stand far and above the previous game? Does it make it harder, I guess, especially since they have to reuse some of the assets and stuff? Does it make it harder, do you think, for a game like this to score well and wow people because it is a sequel?
Yes and no, but for me, if I did reviews, which I don't do scores. If I was a reviewer, I would look at it in a way where you have to you have to compare it to the first one that they did, but at the same time, you got to make it on its own merits of what it is. And yeah, Spider-Man won, and then they raised the bar with Miles Morales a little bit, like as far as the abilities that he had and the fighting that was happening in that game as well. And then his traversal, and then now in this one, they raised the bar because now they raised it where above Spider-Man Miles and the first one, now there's 2 players in this game. So now that's a bar raised, right? You're playing 2 different characters inside this. The bar is raised because the combat is a little bit different now because when you're in the symbiote suit and when you're also just playing Miles and when you're playing Peter, there's technically 3 different Spider-Men that you're playing and that we know of. We don't know if we play as Venom yet inside the game, right? So there's lots of things that could be happening that raise the bar. So when you're reviewing a game, in my opinion, yes, you could compare it to the last game, but I don't think you want to compare it too much because even if they didn't raise the bar, let's just say the traversal didn't have the wingsuit and he just was swinging through the city.
Right.
Would you hold that against them to be like, well, Spider-Man needed to get a Ferrari to get around the bigger map faster? No, you would just go, yeah, the swinging's the same, it's still good, but they raised the bar with the fighting. Do I hold points against it? I personally wouldn't. I would look at it as its own entity and compare. But yeah, it's really hard when you make a sequel to a movie, when you make a second season to a show, when you make a sequel to a video game. When you play the first game, you have no expectations. You're excited to play that game because that's what it is, right? But then after you're done playing that game, you're so excited. You're like, oh man, I can't wait for a sequel. And then that sequel comes out and it has to meet those expectations that you had.
Right.
So it's really hard to make it. And then after this, there's number 3, right? And then the expectations go up higher, and that's why usually trilogies, the third movie, the third game is like less lackluster. They're like, it's not as good as the second one. The second one was like the peak.
Well, and that touches on something here I wanted to go to. I love that you talked about, like, there's obviously probably going to be a third game, and they're talking about, some stuff from Ratchet. And they said everything we do here builds on each other. And so we had a lot of streaming stuff and everything from building open world games. When we got into Ratchet, and all of a sudden we're like, well, now we want to jump instantly. And so you get those things, you hit a crystal, and you jump from world to world. And I've been theorizing they're going to leverage that tech, maybe even in this game. Somebody feels like they played a side quest in the previews that hints at Spider-Verse. And I think Kraven and Venom are looky-loos. I think the whole be greater together, there's so many villains. I think they're going to introduce Spider-Verse, maybe even have like a surprise, like you said, like maybe there's another character. They introduce Spider-Verse near the end, and that's where the third game goes. I think it goes Spider-Verse. That means they get to leave behind New York, or they get to lean on like, well, we have the set pieces. Let's just completely rework them depending on what universe you end up in. Do you think there's a high likelihood we do that? We do a Spider-Verse tie-in? Because I swear to you, the Insomniac Spider-Man is in the latest movie. Like, you can see him. They claim that it's not him. They're lying. They are liars. He's in there. All right? I don't believe them. Do you think that's where we're headed? Do you think there's a likelihood that that's the plan here?
See, I don't think they go straight to Spider-Man 3. I think they go to Miles Morales 2.
Oh.
Right? And I think that is when they introduce the Spider-Verse just in his game, his solo game. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that's the sequel to Miles Morales. And then you have Spider-Man 3, which I think would be the culmination of everything that you've played with Spider-Man 1, 2, Miles Morales 1, Miles Morales 2, and then Spider-Man 3 would be the culmination. That's what I think.
I could see them maybe doing what you're talking about more with the DLC. I don't know if they want to do another game with just Miles, like having them both together and then doing that. It might make more sense to do it as a DLC in this game where you just play as Miles. Sure. But I don't think that's a bad theory, going back and letting Miles kind of have his own day. Maybe do 2 DLCs, one that focuses purely on Miles and another that focuses on Pete. Like, yeah, Pete's away. Pete's, you got to do this or whatever. I think that'd be really, 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 really cool. Just another thing to read here from the head founder and leader of the Spidey Squad, Evan Villarca. He says, I'm not kidding when I say that the black suit's performance was the highlight of my time playing Marvel's Spider-Man 2. And he references Yuri, the voice actor. He's basically saying his performance when you're in the black suit's incredible. There's pride, there's frustration, overconfidence, rage, hatred. He effortlessly hits all the marks and blew me away with his delivery, the voice acting and the storytelling aspect here. I know story's really important for you. Is that something that you're going to be on the lookout here in your review? The voice acting, the writing, that's all got to be on point, right? Because this is almost a movie within the game, because there's a developing story, and we heard from the trailers, like, Pete's having trouble with the symbiote, right? He's getting angry, he's acting differently, and we know that that's likely going to be a tension. And they got Tony Todd, for Pete's sakes, for Venom. So what are you looking for in the voice acting, the writing? Like, where do you put that on importance, right? There's graphics, there's gameplay loop, but I mean, the voice acting, my opinion is it's got to be great, because it's really got to support all of the pieces and parts we're talking about.
I mean, I'm gonna put it on par with the first two games, right? The first two games were phenomenal. I love the acting in the first two games, so I'm not expecting anything lower quality. I would assume that it's at the same quality. Does it have to be better? I don't think it has to be better. I think if it just maintains, right, the whole package, if the acting maintains what it was in the first and second one, and then everything else that they've improved in the game, it would automatically raise this game up higher than the other two.
Yeah, and I think that is always a challenge with a superhero game in particular, because people are going to have their own ideas and expectations about how things should go, right? They're going to say that's not, in line with the comics or the canon or whatever, and I think that's definitely a challenge for superhero games. In the realm of superhero games, I mean, we had Batman. You played Gotham Knights amazingly. You enjoyed Gotham Knights for a while,
the story was pretty good.
That's always surprising to me, because I just couldn't, like, all the other superhero games. Well, you kind of liked Avengers too, didn't you? You played that. For
Avengers. The single player Avengers game was actually a pretty good story as well. Yeah.
The
online aspect of it wasn't very good, but the story and stuff was good.
Right. Well, this is why it's good to do shows together, because those are the two games where I was like, these games are awful. But I loved both Spidey and Miles, and I loved all the Batman games. Do you think superhero games face a unique challenge? Because there's all the discussion about, nominations. Let's not even get to Game of the Year yet. I want to save that. Let's just, review scores in general. Right? It's been a big debate with Starfield, and is there media bias or whatever. I don't want to retread that. I'd rather say, okay, do you think superhero games face a unique challenge with review scores and the critics and the public? Because I feel like the movies dealt with this for a while too. Like, superhero movies would just struggle to get the critical acclaim, the notoriety, and the praise. Like, they're not out here winning Best Picture, for example.
Yeah, no, because let's be honest. When you were kids, nerds liked comic books, and the mass media did not, because they weren't nerdy. They were, comic books are for kids, right? They're stupid. They're not fun. But then there's actually really good stories inside comic books. Graphic novels now. So, like, I think it's the same kind of stuff. Like, people look at video games, and yeah, gamers are nerdy, right? We are nerdy. So we like comic books, we like cartoons, we like toys, we like video games. Where the people that make the reviews of that stuff are people that like writing. Right? They like reading, they like bookworms. They're nerdy in their own way, and they don't really get a lot of the people that play the games. It's changed over the decades, right? There's people that are video gamers now that are reviewers, but for the most part, in the mass media, video games are still nerdy, right? They're still nerdy, even though the mass media, right? Like, when I was a kid, I would get my ass kicked from the football team because I would be playing Mario and they would be playing sports, and now those football players are playing video games, right? So it's come like full circle. So I think there is a way where there is biasy towards certain things. I think there are things sort of like, real quick to make an example, like Rian Johnson with Star Wars. He hated Star Wars, but yet he directed Star Wars, right? And then he completely destroyed that particular Star Wars thing. And everyone has their own opinion on it. But you see what I'm saying? Like, certain people get into certain positions, and now they can make that game, or they can sort of bend their review. Like, maybe something happened with this company when they were younger. Now they're in the position where they can write and go up against this company, and then they have like a little bias towards them, right? I'm not saying there's like a villain story here, like the Joker became because of a video game, but in general, there are biases for video games. Not everyone likes every single video game, so yeah, there are potential of people shitting on something. Pardon me, because they don't like something.
Yeah, well, and I in general, the review score debate, to me, I think it's an interesting discussion because I think a lot of the times people miscategorize things. Because if we get an aggregate score from all of the outlets, and then you can go to, like, Steam, for example, I think that's a wonderful way to get an approximation of, like, how is this game doing? But then there is the Metacritic user scores, which is a joke because everybody goes in there and review bombs, okay?
Right.
Undoubtedly, I think Spider-Man 2 is going to get review bombed because there's a fight going on between, the tribalists on both sides. And so I don't necessarily think you're going to get a good view here of what the game looks like from like Metacritic user scores. But I think when you go to like Metacritic and OpenCritic and you get like a general summation of scores, where do you think this thing lands? Because I do think, like you were just saying, like there's a lot of bias that plays in here, especially with superhero games. Because I feel like from what we're seeing right now and what we're hearing from everybody, like I'm seeing tweets that are talking about how it blew them away, like this right. Demo that they got to play. I mean, I think this thing might hold on to a 90 or higher, which I think is really, really difficult these days. I think that's a difficult thing to do. If you maintain, especially on Metacritic and OpenCritic, if you can stay in the 90s, I think that's impressive. Where do you think public lands on this? I know you don't like to give scores, but you could make a guess, I think, on where you think this thing lands when everything gets added up.
I mean, I guess what did the first game get? Did it get in the 90s? Did it get was it like high 80s, low 90s? I think it would fall the same. I don't know what they got.
It's high 80s, I believe, the last time we checked.
And what did Miles get?
I think Miles might have been higher. Yeah, I'm seeing the original Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 at an 87 on the Metacritic.
So according to the internet, that's trash, right? Anything in the 80s is trash.
Yeah. And then it looks like Miles came in on the PS. Well, the thing is, there's PS4 and PS5. Miles on the PS5 is at an 85. So,
oh my gosh, that's trash as well. Yeah, so I think this will be the highest of the three. Right? I think it will get like 89, 90, maybe. I think it will stay in the 90s. I think it will hit the 90s. Now, obviously, with the review bombs that people will do because they have no lives, and they want to do it. Yeah, I think it's the highest of the games. But then again, I said that for Starfield, for Bethesda games, so I wasn't right there either. So,
well, Starfield has dipped a little bit too. I think that I was saying if it landed in the high 80s, that would be respectable. But it has fallen down to like 83, 84 territory. User scores, it's dropped as well. And I don't think that's that big of a deal. I think that people get really alarmist about that. And so in my mind, if Spider-Man doesn't hold on to a 90-something score, that's not that important. I don't really get too concerned about that. I think for me, it does come down to what's the general public think? What do I think? I think that's usually a better example. Sadly, I don't know. I think it'd be great if we could get that. Like, is there a way for me to go? I've actually not looked into this because usually my interactions with the Sony store is pretty poor. I want to be able to go and see what do the users think? If there's 20,000 people that have left a review about a game or something, like that always to me, I think is more of an approximation of where the game's landing. Because I think you're gaining, I think, more of a viewpoint with volume, So, with Spider-Man 2 being a superhero game and having some of those challenges, I've seen people throwing around the debate and the discussion about Game of the Year. And my general contention is that games like this game genre, open world action adventure, as well as superhero games in general, I think they have a harder time winning Game of the Year. I think there will be, this gets a nomination, no doubt, from what we're hearing from the previews and what we're seeing. this thing's going to get a nomination, but I don't think it will win. I think it'll get edged out. I think Baldur's Gate 3 is pretty much locked up the year. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's a fair assessment? Number one, obviously, I'm not necessarily asking is it fair.
Yeah, I got you.
You think it's a fair assessment that like superhero games and open world action adventure games are certainly contained in sort of a ceilinged, there's only so much you can do, and that makes it harder to win Game of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. When I worked in the film industry, Film of the Year, it's very political. I don't know if the same way works in video games. I would assume it kind of does, right? Because the big games are the big names of the companies, and most of them are usually like first party studios, or they have major investments with other firms and whatnot. So this is why they get pushed to get nomination. So I think just getting nominated, and especially in this particular year in video games, if you're nominated in that top 6 of nominations, that's a win, right? Especially with how many games that came out this year that are in contention for Game of the Year, with Armored Core and Final Fantasy and Jedi Survivor and Hogwarts and Starfield and Spider-Man and Zelda, right? And Mario. There's so many games. So just to get nominated, I think that's a win, because then they could put that on their box or their digital thing that says, Game of the Year edition. They get to go on discount. People see that are not pervy to like what it is, and all of a sudden they go, oh, is this game good? And it says nominated for Game of the Year, and you're like, oh my god, it must have been a good game. So it's like that validation that people look for in certain things, right? So can a superhero movie win? Yeah, I think it can. Just like Lord of the Rings didn't win, and then it did, right? So there was, I think there's a place. Has the game come across? Is Spider-Man 2 going to win Game of the Year? Probably not, but it's definitely going to be in the running for Game of the Year.
Well, and somebody's misrepresenting what I said. I said that Starfield did get review bombed. I think that's something that Metacritic likes. I think they enjoy it. Like, they love the traffic that comes from that. Right? It's sure. good for business. So you're misrepresenting what I said. It's not surprising your account's like a week old. But the idea being, that's why I don't pay attention to Metacritic user scores, because they don't verify purchase. That's why I would love to be able to go to a place where it's like, this is what the people who bought the game and have played think, right? And I think that is something that is tough to, if a game's not in Steam, I think it's really hard as a consumer to get that. It's really difficult. It's like, where am I supposed to go to get a user score? What is it? Because when I go to Amazon and I go to buy something, I know what everybody thinks. Like when I was shopping for Bluetooth, earbuds, right? And I was able to go to Amazon and see exactly what thousands of people thought that had bought the item and had used it. And I don't think we have a great way of doing that. I think it's tough to do. I know Xbox does it through their store, but PlayStation Store, I don't feel like I've ever seen that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't feel like I've ever seen a score in the PlayStation Store.
I've never reviewed a game. I'll be honest with you. I've never left a review for any game. I just play the games, enjoy what I enjoy, and I move on. Isn't it a way to, on the computer, can't you leave a review on Microsoft without purchasing the game, or do you have to purchase the game? I think on the Xbox you have to purchase it through Xbox, but if you do it through the computer, I don't think you have to leave or have to purchase the game. You
do have to purchase it. Somebody tried to do it the other day. Yeah. Okay. The first thing it tells you to do is log in, and then the second thing it tells you is you have to own this to leave a review. You can't just
make an account.
Correct. Yeah, because people were trying to claim that. They were like, "Oh, it's getting review bombed on the Xbox store," and I'm like, I don't think so, because a lot of the complaints were PC problems. I guess the PC store or whatever. And with Spider-Man 2, I would love to be able to do that. I want to be able to go to Spider-Man 2 and say, okay, what are the users thinking? Now, to a certain degree, this is not as big of a deal with Spider-Man, because I feel like Spider-Man kind of I kind of know where Spider-Man's going to land with me, because I love Spidey and I love the last two games. But other games, it would be nice if I'm a little bit more. Here's a good example: PSVR 2 games, right?
Right.
PSVR 2 games are coming out, and there was one in particular that recently came out, Firewall, and they've done some good updates and some good changes. But it'd be really nice if I could go to the PlayStation Store and see, okay, where are people scoring this? Because it was not getting good responses, and it was in rough shape at launch. And I think it's very, very important for the user, for the consumer to know that, right? Especially with something like VR, where if they don't do certain things, it just doesn't feel right. There's a big difference between like a good VR game and a bad VR game, right?
I would love if reviews really matter. Personally, I don't really read reviews. I read reviews on stream because it's content, like we talk about, and it's just fun to banter back and forth and have conversation and whatnot. But I mean, aren't there shows that you like that got bad reviews or got canceled, and you're like, man, I love that show, and it got canceled, right? Or there's a video game that you're like, oh man, great video game, but it wasn't a smash hit, right? Or a movie. Starship Troopers is a perfect example. Not the video game, the movie, right? It's a trash movie, but people love Starship Troopers because it was a fun movie, right? So, do you buy games based on people's reviews, or do you buy it by looking at it with your own eyes and go, you know what, that looks good, right? I think I'm going to like that based on other games that you've played in the past, right? I would love if across the board you have to buy the game, and then the person that leaves the review, it knows because of the data. It's always online now and stuff, how many hours they put into that game, right? So if someone leaves a 0 out of 10, okay, and says worst game I've ever played, and it says they played 2 minutes, or it says they played 50 hours, right? Because if someone says it's a crap game and they put 50 hours in it, that person's a moron, okay? Because they don't know what they just want to crap on it because they crap on it because they also played for 50 minutes, right? So, or 50 hours, not 50 minutes, right? 50 hours. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Like, or they just really just want to make some big stance. I think it should put the time of what you put for your review. I don't think anyone should just be able to be like, yeah, I downloaded it, crap game, bad load screen, start screen looks like crap, right? And they make a bad review. I think that's stupid. I think the industry needs to change its ways. If you're going to leave a review, you got to put your hours in. You can look at the hours. I don't know if PlayStation, can you look at the hours that you put in on PlayStation? Because I know on Xbox, it tells you the hours that you have into a game.
Yeah, you can on PlayStation. It tells me how many hours I played, and I love that on Steam. The other day, I had people claiming, oh, people are review bombing it or whatever, and so I went and looked, and a lot of the negative reviews, I saw people with like 50 over 100 hours that were giving a game a thumbs down, and I was like, that's not a review bomb. I was like, these people have played, and they didn't like they didn't like it, right? And that's why I would love for that to be the reality on the way that you can leave reviews on the storefronts themselves. Like, I would love to be able to do that. Go to the PlayStation Store, and then I can click and see, okay, here's what people are saying, here's what people are scoring it, and also be able to see how long did they play. Like, did they play for a lot of time?
Real quick, when I say that you play for 50 hours and don't know what they're talking about, what I'm saying is, why would you play something for 50 hours if you didn't enjoy it? That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think sometimes the guys on Steam, especially, with a game like Starfield, I think they were, they're trying to give it a fair shot, maybe, or they're hoping it gets better. If
you're a reviewer, that's one thing. But if you're just a regular customer, right, and you're like, I put 150 hours in this game and I hated every minute of it, it's like, why? Why would you put that much time into something if you hate it? You see what I'm saying? So I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about as far as that they put the time in, they don't know what they're talking about. It's like, why would you put that much time into a game that you hate? Like, that is ridiculous to me.
Well, I think sometimes too, you have to be careful. Like, some of the reviews that I was looking at, they're 50 hours, 100 hours. Some of the reviews you could tell, like, they were really hoping things turned around. They were really trying to check every angle, right? Like, does it get better? Does it improve, or what have you? I don't necessarily think either that if they give it a bad score, like they hated it, they're just like, I can't recommend this, right? I took this thing on a lengthy test drive, and I'm just, no, you should not get this. And I think that's fair. I just, from the consumer's perspective, I would love it if we had a couple of things on console that we don't currently have. One of those things is, I want to be able to see the score. I like that Xbox shows the score. What are users saying? But I also want to be able to click refund, And I don't think I'm worried about that with Spider-Man. I just think Spider-Man's a great catalyst to the discussion because we're going to see another round of debates about review scores and debates about is the game good or not. And it's like, I would just love the ability as the consumer to, if a PSVR 2 game comes out or, some game I'm unfamiliar with the studio, it'd be really, really nice to be able to say, hey, what are users scoring this? And if I buy it and I find that I don't land where everybody else lands with, it's a good game. I'm like, I don't think it's a good game. I would like to be able to get that refund.
After 10 hours, after 15 hours, after 20 hours?
No, I think refunds, you'd have to limit, like Steam does. Okay. You'd have to be under 2 hours. I know people are like, well, you don't know if a game's good in that amount of time. Like, I do. If I play 2 hours, I know if I'm going to want to continue playing or not, especially if there's problems, bugs, or glitches. Like, 2 hours in Jedi Survivor, like, I'd have been like,
But that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't continue playing for 48 hours afterwards and go, this game's trash. It's like, I think the person that says that to me is a trash person because you don't know what you like or love, right? Or hate, but you're pushing yourself through it just to go, yeah, it's garbage. Now, if you're a reviewer, people in chat are like, well, Maddie played and this person said, that's their job. They're reviewing games. I'm talking about the average person that buys a game and says, this game is trash, and they have 100 hours. And I'm like, why would you put 100 hours into that game if you thought it was trash? Did you not know it was trash at hour 50? Did you not know it was trash at hour 60? Did you not know it was trash at hour 90? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what you like and you know what you don't like. Why continue playing something you don't like?
I know there were people that pushed through in Jedi Survivor because they wanted to know what happened, and they just dealt with the problems and performance issues. I also know in Fallout, I think people were hoping it would age like wine. Like, the further I get, the better it gets. Because there are people that have said that. There are to be fair to Starfield, there are people that have made it, 100-something hours, and they're like, this is when it really gets good. And then there are other people that make it to that point, and they're like, no, I can't recommend it. So I don't know if it's as clean, but I do think there are people that fit what you're saying, right? They get to like hour 60, and they try to turn around and claim that the game is terrible. It's like, well, why'd you play that long, right? So I do think there are times where there are people that do seem to contradict their own conclusion with their own playtime. But I also think sometimes, sunk cost fallacy it's a strong motivator, man. They're like, I got to get my money's worth out of this TV show, this movie. I paid for it. I got to keep going. I wonder if less people would do what you're saying if they could just refund it, if they could just get their money back.
Or how about, specifically, you're talking about Starfield. You didn't have to buy it, right? There's zero money exchanging. You're on Game Pass, and you could literally try it and go, yeah. What are you getting your money back? $10 for Game Pass because you paid for Game Pass just to get Starfield. And you're like, I didn't like Starfield. They're like, well, we have all these other games that you could try for $10. You know what I'm saying? Like, the people that are complaining and that are saying that you have to get it day one or week one, you don't even have to buy that game. You could literally just try it on Game Pass.
Yeah. I just still think the current here is we should be better protected as consumers. Like, we should.
I agree, 100%. 100%.
You wouldn't have those situations. Somebody would say, yep, this game blows. I'm getting my money back, right? Yep. Wheezy put 100 hours into vanilla Cyberpunk. I think it was genuinely horrid. I wanted to give it a fair shake so I could criticize it from a place of intelligence. That's the other problem is sometimes you get told, well, you didn't play. People always tell me that with Cyberpunk. They're like, you didn't play long enough. It's like...
It's a double-edged sword. It is.
So if I play enough, then they're going to say, well, you're stupid. Why'd you play that much? It's like,
well, if your job is to talk about it and whatnot, right? But if you're a reviewer, did you review Cyberpunk? Did you give it like a Lono 8 out of 10? Did you do that? No, you talked about it like, I played it. This is what I liked. This is what I didn't like. And you're also not swinging companies losing millions of dollars based on what you score it. You know what I'm saying? You don't particularly have that power where someone like Jim Sterling, right? Or I'm sorry, Stephanie Sterling, okay, can sway people and lose money for companies based on what they're doing, right? So I had a conversation about if you're going to review a game, like an actual review of a game, if you can't get your review out, and I get the review process has to get out because it's clicks, it's all about clicks, and that's what they do. But if you want a true review, then you have to finish the game, right? A lot of these people just beeline through the main story and we're like, yada yada, wasn't good, but yet the rest of the game stories are good. So it's different for every game, right? If you make a game that's 8 hours long, like 15 hours long, like Spider-Man, you can go through the main story and beat the game. You don't talk anything about the extra side quests. You just talk about the main story. You're like, this is my preview review or my in-game review, what's the word? Ongoing review of Spider-Man through the main story. This is my thoughts on it. I'll get back to you at the end, just so they can get those clicks. But if you play the first like 3 stories of Spider-Man 2 and you're like, it was trash, and well, did you finish the game? Like, I'm not going to respect you, me personally, as a reviewer, a person that your job is to review these games, if you didn't finish the game and you didn't try all the stuff to give me the most information that I want, right? So that's the way I look at reviewers.
Well, and so people in chat are taking issue with what you said. I think what Mike was getting at is if you put 80 hours into a game and you turn around and just call it trash, right? Just like a thoughtless, it's trash, it's garbage. He's like,
I'm not talking about reviewers, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, well, you're trash. Like, if you put 80 hours into a game and you turn around and give it a thoughtful review and you give it a thumbs down and you're like, I can't recommend it. I don't think Mike was taking issue with somebody putting a ton of hours in and concluding it's not a good game or they can't recommend it. He was saying, if you put 80 hours in, you can't turn around and say, oh, it's just trash. Like, who plays 80 hours of trash? I think that was his point. He was sort of driving at the very extreme negative reviews, but you put in 80 hours. Like, there's got to be some redeemable qualities at that point.
That's right, John. I'm calling you trash, specifically. Yes, John C. R.A., you are trash. That's right. I'm calling you trash. I didn't say it specifically, but now I did. So now you can take it to the bank. I called you trash.
Eugene saying nobody did that, though. That's straw manning. I think we've encountered people like that before. I remember I would encounter that in Destiny. People would say it's a trash 100%. Game, it's garbage, it's awful, and I'm like, you've put thousands of hours in. Who would do that, right? Come on, there's got to be some redeeming qualities. There's got to be some good experiences. I don't think anybody did that with Starfield, though. I mean, I looked at most of the reviews on Steam, and they were like, the one guy had like 100 hours, and he was like, it just gets smaller the more that I play. And I think in a game like Spider-Man 2, because it's smaller, I think you find that out faster. Like, if you genuinely play Spider-Man 2 for an hour and you're like, I don't like this, you're going to know faster, I think, in these types of games. I do think it takes a little bit longer, but I generally think I can figure it out in about 2 hours. Is this game for me or not?
If I eat something and it tastes like crap, do I force myself to eat the whole thing and go, you know what? It still tastes like crap. No, I'm going to stop eating it and go, yeah, it's not for me, right? That's just me personally, right? If you want to continue eating, poop on a plate, by all means, go ahead.
Mackie with a $10 super chat says, 100 hours is a lot to put in to call something trash unless you're saying it's in bad faith. If you put 100 hours into a game and don't like it, then you don't value your time. Again, I just think it depends because the good example there, with Destiny, you might run the distance with a game like that and then it slowly, in your mind, turns sour and turns bad. And then you're like, this game is trash now, even though you got hundreds of hours of enjoyment out of it. I just think in general with reviewing of games, like when I'm looking at Spider-Man and thinking about like Game of the Year potential, where this thing lands, there's obviously a bias because, I think this is what should happen with the story and, superheroes and all of that. I just consistently would love to have I just want that floor of no matter what the game is, I want to be able to go and see what the users think because I value that quite a bit more. I remember this happened with Man of Steel. I saw Man of Steel get really low critic scores and then the audience, it landed in like the 80s or something. And I was like, well, I'm going to love that movie because, the audience is loving it and the critics are hard to please. And I think I'm kind of landing there with video games now too, is like you can look at the critics and you can look at the reviews and you can get that approximation of what people are thinking, but I think it's far more valuable to get like an aggregate of what the public that purchased it, what they think. I think that's what I was really driving at. I want to be able to get that from any platform I go to because I think that's helpful. I don't need that for Spider-Man 2. But there's a lot of PSVR 2 games that I'm kind of like, I don't know if I should get that or not. And I got to go to YouTube or blogs to see it. I'd love to be able to go to the storefront and see it. What do the people that have got this think of this game?
That's a terrible example. Drinking a glass of cognac for $200. First of all, I would do my research and I wouldn't buy a $200 glass of cognac and then go, it's crap. if I did buy a bottle, I would then be really polite and give it to other people. Hey, you like cognac? Here you go. Here's a free bottle, right? Because that's the type of person I am.
Well, yeah, and again, I think this is a leisure. It's a leisure market. It's not that expensive to buy games. I know with Spider-Man 2 and when it's coming out, a couple of games, in State of Play, Helldivers in particular got pushed out of this year, got pushed to February. What are your thoughts on how it seems like PlayStation's doing more episodic marketing? Like, they're not really talking about, I don't have a clue what their first-party studios are doing right now. And I think some of that's related to just how popular Spider-Man is. Like, why talk about anything else, like, when Spidey's on the docket? But it does seem like we're going to get things very piecemeal now. We're not getting the big vision that, this game's coming in 2 years, 3 years. What do you think about that? I think marketing in general is changing for gaming, but PlayStation seems to have very much pulled their cards close to their chest.
I've been saying this for years. If you don't have anything to say, don't say it, because then what happens is if you announce a game, Skull and Bones, what was that, 2017, right? And here we are in 2023. Skull and Bones is still not out yet. You know what I mean? Like, you give this prestige of games that are coming out and they never come out. And you're like, well, what happened to that game, right? Beyond Good and Evil 2, where's that?
Right.
So you hit these epic moments of these, oh my God, that game looks fantastic. And then you're like, well, where is it? So I personally like that the games don't say anything. I like that Hi-Fi Rush came out for Xbox and no one said anything about it and they just dropped it, right? I like that all of a sudden the marketing didn't go a lot big for everyone was worried that Starfield wasn't getting marketed. And then about a month ahead of time, they started marketing it, right? I like what Hogwarts did where they kind of didn't market it until November, and then every month they did one of those events to show what Hogwarts was. They did the build up. They weren't talking about other things that were coming out. They just talked about that thing. So I think Spider-Man is the thing right now, and when that comes out, then they'll start talking about other things that are coming out. Helldivers, they'll push Helldivers, they'll push whatever that next thing is. So I like it. Don't say anything until you have something to say, and then when you do have something to say, make sure it's nice. Make sure it's concise to what people want to know. That way people are not asking, well, what is that game? Well, what is this thing? And you show it a year and a half ago and you're like, well, what is it? Helldivers, what did they show? They showed it over the summer for the first time.
Yes.
And now they showed it. They showed it again now. And you're like, okay, now I know a little bit more. I still want to know more about it. But now it's coming out in February. So I'm assuming around the video game show, there's going to be like videos popping out. IGN will probably have a, in-depth look, preview program, something along the lines leading up to Helldivers coming out. And I think that's the way it should be.
Got another sort of response here from the preview. Tim Geddes is comparing Spider-Man 2 on PS5 to the jump from Super Mario 3 to Super Mario World. Everything you loved about the game, but more polished, more refined, more bombastic, and more dialed to 11. So people are really seeing this as a huge uptick and a huge jump from the previous game. Yesterday we had a Nintendo Direct and we had a State of Play, and I'm always struck by how people think every showcase is bad. It doesn't matter what they show. It doesn't matter what the announcements are. I went into the State of Play with pretty low expectations. They said, we're going to have some third party, some indie, some PSVR 2. Oh, and we're going to talk about games that were previously announced. And so I told people, I was like, Spidey will be there. They're not going to pass up an opportunity to talk about Spidey. I didn't expect what we got, though. It exceeded my expectations. Why do you think every showcase, every State of Play, every Nintendo Direct, there's people that are like, this sucks, this was mid, that was lame, I hate all these games?
Because people they're creatures, man. They want the grass is greener on the other side. They hype up everything themselves, and they'll never hit your expectations, right? It's not about that you have to like lower your standards, but you're putting stuff out there, right? Like we'll go back to Starfield. Like they told you about Starfield, and yet people like made Starfield much bigger than they thought it was, right? Even though they told you what it was. Everyone's like, I thought I was going to be able to do this. It would be nice if I did that, right? Like, I'm not going to get Spider-Man and think that, I can do all of New York, right? Even the mainland. No, it's just Manhattan. Oh, can you imagine if they brought Wolverine in the game and then X-Men came in and there was like this all big battle going on? Like, they have like these expectations that are just beyond what they can manage, because they have no idea how long game development takes. They have no idea what goes into copyrights and licensing and all these other things, how many people worked on the game. They just think that, that's mid. They didn't do anything. Oh, that's garbage. This is lackluster. You're never going to please these people. These people Like, these are the kids that grew up where mom made them a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they wanted chicken. And then they got chicken, and they wanted pizza. And then they got pizza, and they wanted something. It's like they're never happy. They just want to be miserable. They just want to complain about something. Those are the people that you'll never, ever, satisfy.
I feel like it's grown to, you and I have been doing this for 8 years, going on 9 years. We're both almost in here doing this for a decade. And I remember, in 2017, 2016, I'd cover E3, cover events, and there'd be people that were like, that wasn't so great. But generally, I didn't feel like they were a large group. Now I feel that sentiment has grown, and I don't quite know why, but
it's fun to hate.
Yeah, I guess. Like, every showcase, every event, everything I watch, like, they will literally tell you, hey, we're going to do a 20-minute state of play, and it's going to be about grass and paint. And people would show up and be like, where is Wolverine? Like, it doesn't matter what...
Where's the trees? They told us they were...
Like, it doesn't matter. They could be like, listen, we're literally going to talk with an artist about how they design textures. They could tell you it's going to be boring. And people would still watch and say, that was mid, and I thought Wolverine was going to be there. Like, it just doesn't seem to matter. Which I just wonder if this is related to why this year is so crazy. One of the years this year is so crazy is because, like, 2020 kind of kicked everything down the road, and now we're kind of having a deluge, right? We're having the delay deluge. All those games that got delayed and pushed back, they're all coming this year. And I think that drove people, inside, and they had to stay home. And I think maybe people are a little too isolated. I think they're a little too indoors, and ironically, I mentioned grass. I think they need to go touch some. Like, it's like, man, there's a bigger world out there.
They would hate grass. They would touch it and go, it made my hand itchy if you're in Florida. They'd be like, it's not what I thought it would feel like. I thought grass would feel differently. They would complain about that, Lona.
Well, you don't have grass in Florida. I don't know what that is. It's plastic.
You have weeds. Yeah, it's like weeds.
It's you guys have the ability to grow plastic from the ground. Well, and everybody got mad about that baby steps game at the beginning. The guy, like, walking. It's like one of those really frustrating games, like getting over it.
Triggers, like when you walk, each trigger it moves. It's a fun game. It's like a fun, stupid little game.
I think I'm starting to take enjoyment from people getting angry and moaning. I love it. Like, when I was on Twitter and I saw people getting really angry about that game, they're like, what is this? Why are you showing this? That's starting to give me joy. It's like, I love that I can appreciate and laugh at a game like that, and I know I'm going to play it on a Friday night and get really frustrated. And I take a certain amount of joy from their misery. Like, I'm learning to be entertained by it, because it's all theater. It's a circus. Like, it's not real. It's a joke. Right. Like, the whole thing is a joke. How do you manage it as we're content creators. We're talking to the public. I mean, does it affect you? Does it irritate you?
No, it doesn't irritate me. It doesn't. I have fun with people. They take me seriously, and the people that come in for my chat for the very first time, they don't know I'm very sarcastic and whatnot, so they take me very, very seriously, which is fine because I get the joy out of that. But I don't take any of this stuff seriously. If you have a crap take and you're a Sony pony or you're an Xbot or whatever, I will call you out, and I will call you stupid, and I will call you other things, right? And it's all in good fun because that's what we're doing. We're doing entertainment, right? But at the same time, like, video games are supposed to be fun. And if you're not having fun playing video games, then go find something that you're having fun with. Maybe they're having fun trolling us. Maybe they have fun talking crap about something, and they have more enjoyment about talking crap about stuff than they actually have of playing those things, right? But we're getting so bogged down by people, just every little thing. Like, they don't even know what to complain about anymore. They start breaking down the games even more. Did you see that third pixel from the left? Did you see that? It's a copy and paste. They go into, like, more detail and stuff. You're just like, dude, calm down. Like,
I saw that from the Spider-Man 2 footage. I guess one of the
copy paste of the buildings.
Yeah, one of the screenshots. Two of the buildings have the same texture, and I'm like,
oh my god.
I'm like, so you went looking for that. You went looking for that. You're like, I'm gonna find something. There's a problem here, and it's like, Jiminy Christmas.
People complain about start screens. People complain that you can't land on gas giants. People complain that there's same pictures in a video game. People saying that it's unrealistic. It's a video game. Like, it's like, what is wrong with you? Just go have fun. I don't know. Find a girl, find a boy, do something, touch grass, get a pet, do something.
I know there was a clip floating around of some people getting excited about like the Final Fantasy game, and like one guy is like frustrated. He's like angry, and it's like, and people were frustrated at that game, the goofy game Baby Steps. And I go into these showcases, and I expect there to be somewhere between 2 to 4 games that I'll be interested in or excited about, right? I'll say 4 that I'll be interested in, maybe 1 or 2 that I'm really excited about. And then I expect the rest of them to probably not land on me. Like, I'm not pre-ordering and buying the merch and getting super excited for foam stars. Like, I'm not doing that, right? It's Splatoon with soap, okay? Like, that's, my kids are going to like it. I think it's going to be a hit.
How dare you, Lono? How dare you compare those 2 games to each other? They're totally different. Totally different.
Right. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, it doesn't bother me. It's like there is somebody that sees those trailers and they get excited. Like, that's what makes gaming so cool. Like, I didn't really care about the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth trailer because I'm not a Final Fantasy guy. Like, I like Final Fantasy 16, but I don't, that's not my game. That's not my nostalgic river. Like, that doesn't touch my heart of like, oh my gosh, McCloud and or Cloud and all the different things and Sephiroth. Like, I'm just like, oh, cool, man. I hope the Final Fantasy guys are excited because, I'm kind of not. And I think that's what makes for a good showcase is when I know if I'm not excited about this, there's very likely a bunch of people that are, because there are so many different types of games.
Yeah. Did you watch the Nintendo Direct yesterday?
I did, yeah.
I didn't get excited at anything. I showed it to my son. He was ecstatic.
There you go.
You see what I'm saying? I looked at it and I'm like, nothing looks good to me. He's like, oh my God, Mario. And he wants to play. It's like, and he was excited about Luigi's Mansion 2, right? Like does nothing for me, but it's also not for me, right?
Right.
It might be. I might be a guy that likes it and go, oh man, I'm excited about Luigi Mansion 2.
Yeah.
But majority of grown-ups are not, and Nintendo knows their market, man. Nintendo knows their market, hence why they sell 20 to 50 million copies of a game when they put it out on their system.
Well, and I mean, I even said McCloud instead of Cloud. Like, I'm just not a big Final Fantasy guy. Like, I even said the wrong name because I just like it's not my world. It's not my game, right? But the Nintendo Direct, this isn't really referencing Spider-Man, but I mean, we're kind of talking about everything that happened yesterday. I thought the Nintendo Direct was awesome because Nintendo's like, yeah, we're just going to do old style games, right?
Yeah.
Like Mario and Donkey Kong. I want to play that, And then the Peach game, I know my daughter will she'll be ecstatic about. She will want to play that so badly. But then I'm already excited about Super Mario RPG, so I was excited to see that. And it was like a Mario tour de force is what it was.
I was pissed off that none of those Nintendo games are on Game Pass because my wallet's going to go really low.
Yeah, there it is. The classic question. Are any of these games on Game Pass?
Are they on Game Pass?
Oh my gosh. So Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, is this a wait, so you played the previous ones, but you don't have a PS5 yet.
I'm not getting it, and it hurts me to the core. But yeah, I'm gonna hold out.
So you can't get this day one.
It doesn't matter though, Lono, because I'm just gonna review bomb it, and I'm gonna put reviews on, and I'm gonna say, well, I played the first 2. This game's crap, or this game is. It doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna leave reviews anyway.
That's right. I mean, this is obviously a day one for me. There's a handful of titles that no matter what, like Hellblade 2 is a day one for me. If it's a sequel to a game that I've loved, like I'm diving in immediately. And this is a must play. And from what we're hearing from the previews, I think this thing is he's definitely going to deliver. We've kind of run through a lot of the previews. We kind of already touched on all of the high points. Was there anything that came out of the information we learned yesterday, right? Because we learned about, fast travel. We learned about switching. We learned about some, certain elements in the game that was sort of new. Is there anything we didn't cover that you were like, oh man, that really stood out? I'm really looking forward to that. Because I don't think I wasn't necessarily prepared for them to drop a bunch of info. I figured they were just going to do like a trailer just to remind everybody and maybe promote a deluxe edition or something.
This is why I like stuff like this, because I have no expectations. Maybe because I don't have a PlayStation, right? Maybe my expectations are so low because I don't have one. But when I watched the PlayStation State of Play yesterday, I was like, oh man, I was interested in Avatar, Pandora, right? Frontier Pandora, Pandora Frontier. What is it called? Frontier Pandora.
Frontiers of Pandora.
Yeah, Frontier, right? That looked interesting, right? Helldivers 2 looks really good. And then Spider-Man 2. I'm super excited. And the stuff that they showed in Spider-Man 2 is just more of the stuff I already loved in Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales. And it's just more of the stuff that I loved. And I was like, oh, cool. I didn't know about the map until they said it. I didn't know about the fast travel until they said it. There was a swapping between. I thought it was going to be, before they said it, I thought it was going to be more like that Grand Theft Auto. Remember Grand Theft Auto in 5 when you played? And it would get like super slow where you went from... what's it called? Michael, and then you'd go all the way up in the sky, and then it would go across the map, and then it would come back down. I thought they were going to do something along the lines of that in Spider-Man, and I'm like, oh, great. They're not doing that. And I got excited about that. And I'm also excited about that a single-player game where you can earn, besides the pre-order stuff, where you can earn all the cosmetics in the game by just playing the game. I loved how Spider-Man did that. I love how Miles Morales did that. And I love how they're doing it and continue doing that in this game. So yeah, I wasn't looking for anything, and the stuff that they told me, it was enough information to get me more excited about the game I was already excited for.
I liked how in the first game, if you did the little check boxes and the book bags and all little things,
yeah,
you actually got stuff that helped your character. I liked that it wasn't just like, hey, congratulations, man, like a little thumbs up or something, like a little checkbox. Because I like a checkbox. It's satisfying.
Yeah, that's why we're gamers. Yeah,
that's right. It's satisfying, those little check boxes. But I think it's a little bit more satisfying to get, something in the game that's practical or it's tangible. Adding to the tech or what have you. I'm playing through, Jedi Survivor right now, and I barely ever use the Force. I'm all about the lightsabers.
Yeah, I was the same way.
When you play Spidey, I remember I didn't use the gadgets. I just kind of swung around and punched, Where did you land in that realm?
So when I played Spider-Man, I did the gadgets a little bit in the first one, but the second one I didn't really do. I just the punching. I totally forgot that Miles had like all these different abilities where he's like electrocuting people and doing all these other things. And I never really used it. I just used it, and I would get in this mentality of I would be doing this one part of the game where I'm fighting all these guys, and I would get killed, and I'm like, I do it again and again, and I had to get reminded by when I played the game online. Everyone was like, "You do know he has powers?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right, he does have powers," and it made it easier to go through. Yeah, I always like the brute force, just punching stuff and seeing if I can get through it that way.
Yeah,
it's a cheat code if you're doing special abilities and stuff.
I definitely did that in Sekiro as well. People are like, you're not using any of the shinobi arts, like you're just using your blade. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's what I like. I just, every once in a while I'll shove somebody in Fallen Order because Jedi Survivor, because they're like standing on a ledge or something, and it's obvious that's what they want me to do. But in the fights, I just kind of lean on the saber, and I think in this game, I might play a little differently. I might say, no, I want to lean on some of the tech, because they're going to be adding a whole lot of stuff. And this trailer actually even reveals that, I guess Mysterio's in here. I didn't know that, they were going to have him in there.
You showed him for like a split second. Well, you think it's Mysterio, right? He's got the color scheme of Mysterio. When you play Spider-Man, do you play sneaky or do you go right into the battle?
I think it depended on the mission, because there were some missions that made more sense. Like it was set up to where I would basically try to do nothing but takedowns and not get seen. That's fun. That's like a fun little challenge,
Yeah. That's what I would do. I'd sneak around, try to get everyone down before, and then they always open that door and more guys come in the room, and you're like, you have to, you have to do it again.
Right. There are other times where I'm like, nah, let's rumble. Let's go. Let me try to get my combo up. Let me try to get my new moves out. I love the cinematic takedowns. You know, I think it sort of depends on the context of what we're doing. And that's one thing I do think that these games excel at. And I'm interested to try out some of the new abilities, because you don't feel like you're getting into that content loot rut where I go in the room, I punch the guys, oh, I'm done. It's, well, you can sneak. You could do a mixture of stealth and fighting. You can fight hyper aggressive. You can use lots of gadgets. And I think that's kind of in this game's corner, and I'm excited about that aspect of being able to try out a bunch of just new playstyles, new gadgets, instead of, I think some of the older games especially that relied on like melee-based combat, it was punch until it's time to counter, and then punch until it's time to counter.
One of the things I want to know that maybe they said today and I didn't hear it because I was watching, not listening, for today's footage, but did they mention, like, when you're leveling up, if I level up Peter, does Miles raise up at the same time, or is it the more you use that person, they raise up, or is it a shared skill tree? Like, these are things that I would like to know that I don't know if they do or not.
Yeah, I don't actually know, because I don't know if we'd have to scour the previews to see if they've spoken directly to that, where, you know, because that is interesting. Like, if you start leaning heavily on Pete, are you going to turn around and be like, oh, Miles doesn't have anything, right? He's not unlocked anything. Now, I would imagine with the gadgets, you usually have to spend a currency, and I don't think they're going to share everything. I mean, because they definitely have different abilities, so we'll have to see how they decide to pace that. Because, yeah, if you lean too heavily in one direction, you might be sort of robbing.
Well, they did say that they're gonna there's missions that Peter can't go on and Miles does, right? So they're going to force you to use both of them, so you won't be able to lean 100% towards one character. They did mention that a long time ago, where they said that you know, Miles has his set quests that you can't take Peter on, and vice versa. So
yeah, people are saying I believe some skills are shared. I'm pretty sure I saw shared aspects. I think some of it will be shared, of course. I'm speaking more, and I think Mike's speaking more in general to like XP, right? Like leveling up. Like, hey, you got new stuff because you've been playing for a while. You know, I think that's the inquiry that he has. Like, how's that going to function?
Right. Like, if everyone in the pool gets the same XP, but now I level up to level 2 and it's an ability for Peter's suit, but not Miles' suit, right? Does Miles also get that? Is it just linked? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just feel it's just something I want to know. It's not a big deal. I just wanted to know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, overall, the previews are just absolutely glowing. Insomniac had seemingly no agenda here. It seems like everybody got to play this, like people of varying sizes, people of different channel types. There are pro Xbox, folks that got their hands on this thing, and I think that really speaks to the confidence level. I would imagine we're going to see a review embargo similar to God of War Ragnarok. I bet a week before the game comes out, the reviews hit, and we'll have a very, very good, idea about how this game's doing, because it's landing on the 20th. Wouldn't surprise me at all if on October the 13th or the 12th we get a review embargo drop and we get all those reviews, and that's exciting to me. I like when a developer has poured themselves into something and they're able to kind of strut their stuff, because Insomniac's been kind of strutting on Twitter. They're like, y'all haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg yet. You haven't really seen anything. This is just the beginning. And they're seemingly being pretty controlled with that as well. I think people are only able to play, they said it was a sizable demo, but they contained them to early in the game.
So I have a question for you. Do you think, because Insomniac's making Wolverine, do you think at the end, sort of like the end credit scene or something, do you think we see Wolverine inside the Spider-Man universe?
They've said that he's not in their universe because I thought an amazing post-credit scene would be Peter literally bumps into Logan and Logan just says, like, watch it, bub. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's Logan. And then that's it. They just roll credits, because that would be perfect. Like, because Peter's so, unassuming.
And it would be a huge missed opportunity since the studio's making the game, right? I mean, it's the same engine, same stuff.
Yeah, I think when they said that, they could be lying because they don't want you to know. Because if they said, they're in the same universe, well, then you'd expect it, right? So it's very possible they're lying. Like, they're lying about that he's not in the Spider-Verse. Shut up. He's in the Spider-Verse. We all saw him. Like, you're telling me I didn't see him? It's the same stinking outfit, right? It's iconic. It's very recognizable. They've all moved to Wolverine. The massive amount of the staff has moved from Spider-Man to Wolverine, so they're already kind of moving over and gearing up. Now, everybody's saying, Wolvie's supposed to come next year. I don't know about that. That seems nuts to me. What kind of parallel development are they able to do? How many people are working on Spidey? How many people have been working on Wolverine, and for how long?
Wolverine's just going to be in Manhattan. It's going to be this. It's going to be the same. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that wouldn't go over well. I did say yesterday that if they made a Deadpool game and it was basically this game, like they just put you in New York and he moved real similar to Spider-Man, I was like, I think people would be very critical of that. Like, you're pulling back the onion. You're like, wait a minute, this is basically just Spider-Man. But I think it is fair to say, no, this is a sequel. Like, it's legitimate to put it in this area, but obviously they didn't just put you in the area. They've expanded upon it, pretty significantly. So. Well, we typically, what we do on Fridays, guys, is we go to a VIP stream. You can hang out with me, Mike, and my producer. It's unfiltered, and you get a little behind-the-scenes look on how we thought the week went, how we thought this show went, and just to talk about life in general and the industry. And you can come with us if you're a member, but you have to upgrade to VIP, so you're going to need to use the upgrade command and go change your perks. And don't forget, tonight, this is for everybody. Tonight's fight night. You can watch my wife and I play Mortal Kombat 1. That's something that you guys earned and unlocked last month. It should be hilarious. So if you're a member, don't miss that. 8 p.m. Eastern every Friday. You can hang out with my wife and I in a stream. And Mike's going to tell you where you can find him and the kind of content he's making before we kind of head over here to this new stream.
You can find me over on 30NSG. I do streams Monday through Thursday from 10 o'clock in the morning to about noon Eastern. I just read the news and we have conversation. Chat is 100% part of the show. And then Monday through Wednesday, we do Let's Plays. I'm doing Captain's Log, Adventures of Jack Burton inside Starfield right now, role-playing inside that game, having a lot of fun. And then I know it's hard to believe, having a lot of fun. And then Thursday nights, podcasts, Generation X Gaming, weekly podcast that goes over a few of the top stories in the past week, and we rant along the way. Been doing 365 episodes, so you can watch one episode a day for a year. That's how long we've been doing it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Guys, check out his channel. He's in the description below. You can just click his name and you can check him out. And if you're looking for that kind of content, especially like if the evening, time block works on Thursdays, check out that podcast. And if you're wanting Starfield gameplay, you're wanting somebody that's getting into it and enjoying it, you're not going to get that here because that's not me. I don't well, I don't really do gameplay. I'll show something off day of. But it didn't hook me. It didn't get me. It did not pull me in. So you can go and check out that over there on 30 and So Gaming's channel. Guys, do me a favor. There's still a ton of people here. There's over 400 folks here. Take a second and press the like button. That does help this video perform well, even once we're not live. Even consider looping back and leaving a comment. If you did enjoy this broadcast, it's almost a 2-hour-long discussion where you got to see a bunch of the new footage and hear us discuss Spider-Man 2 review scores, Game of the Year, and a host of other subjects that touch down on the state of play, showcases and everything else. So make sure you take a second, especially you lurkers. This is the second stream of the day. So make sure you unlurk and press that thumbs up button. And then I'm going to redirect us to the VIP stream. And if you want to come with us, you're going to have to upgrade. If you're not going to upgrade, we will see you tonight for the members only stream with my wife for Fight Night. Make sure you're in the Discord. It's members only because you might not get notified about streams right now. YouTube's been a little funky, so that's a great reason to be in the members only Discord. Thanks so much for being a VIP. We're going to bring people over from the previous stream and do a little VIP unfiltered stream with myself, 30 and Still Gaming, and my producer. If you're at the VIP level, we greatly appreciate you doing that and supporting the channel at that level. If this is the first time you've ever been here for one of these, you can always go back and watch the previous ones as well. We sort of recap the week, everything that went down, and we're going to end the previous stream. We were doing sort of a preview roundup. We actually didn't really look at a ton of previews. It was kind of difficult to like pull up a bunch of different ones, but we pulled up some of, sort of the choice quotes from an IGN, and we just kind of discussed what people were saying and had the footage rolling. So I'm going to end that, and I'm going to bring everybody over from that stream and